The following is a Shaw Public Affairs presentation.
Constituency Report is produced as a public service by members of the BC Legislature through the facilities of Shaw TV.
Hello and welcome to Constituency Report. I'm Tracy Palazzari, and joining me here in the studio today is Mary Polak. She is MLA for Langley and Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure. Welcome back to the show. How are you?
Thank you, Tracy. Doing just fine.
Yeah, great to have you here. And since we last spoke, a new ministry for you. How are you enjoying the role so far?
Transportation and infrastructure is a fun ministry to have, although it certainly has its days that can be interesting, but it is a ministry where you can get a whole lot done, and certainly people have seen over the last 12 years or so, we've managed to do an awful lot in transportation and infrastructure across the province.
And impact a lot of people in the process, helping them get home faster.
Absolutely. I have talked to people about the changes with the Port Mann Highway 1 widening, and they will tell me quite openly this has changed their life. They're getting home from work with another hour to play with their kids, much easier for them to manage their childcare. In the mornings, I had one lady thank me profusely for the fact that she can now sleep in another hour. This really has been life-changing for people who live south of the Fraser.
Definitely. And we'll start off with a couple of photos from the Port Mann, the new Port Mann opening up. I'm guessing a very exciting day for you.
Hugely exciting. We've been watching this for so long, and we've been talking about it for a long time. One of the challenges with projects of this size, and this is the largest road infrastructure project in the province's history, and projects of this size take a long time to get from concept to building and completion, and that's very difficult for governments to manage when they're on a 4-year time span. So long time coming, and a lot of very grateful commuters, especially those who can now ride the bus across the Port Mann Bridge.
Yeah, it's been about 20 years since we've
Just
been
about
able to do
25 years.
Wow.
1986 they stopped service across the bridge, and it was because it was completely unreliable. The congestion at the point when the bridge opened, the congestion on the old bridge had reached a point where we literally had 13 to 14 hours of congestion each and every day. So there wasn't even a rush hour that you could avoid if you were a commuter. It was just congested all the time.
And I'm guessing among the positive feedback you're hearing, whenever a project of that magnitude is being constructed, there's all sorts of little delays in the construction process and people getting around, but those were probably well worth the benefit people are seeing now.
And in fact, with the Port Mann Bridge, the whole project, of course, isn't complete yet, but with the Port Mann Bridge itself, they have remained on time throughout the project. So they've managed that through all sorts of different challenges, and yet come in with a project that is on budget, that is on time, and we have every expectation that the rest of the project will be the same. They've also done a very good job of keeping traffic moving, although sometimes I know in a delayed way, unfortunately, but they've really, I think, done a good job of managing the traffic flow while they constructed the bridge and, of course, the other interchanges, etc., that they've done.
This project was a big job creator as well. Great family supporting
About
jobs.
8,000 jobs, all told, when you look at the work across the whole corridor on the Highway 1. And now, of course, we'll work toward the completion of the Highway 1 widening, the interchange improvements, and there'll be improvements to the Cassiar Tunnel as well. So that whole corridor is going to be completely transformed for commuters.
Yeah, and also moving goods faster in addition to people getting home sooner.
Makes a huge difference, and that's where the South Fraser Perimeter Road comes in. That's a bit of a sleeper. Commuters aren't really well aware of that yet. Truckers certainly are. First phase has completed that connects to the Patola Bridge, but when the entire South Fraser Perimeter Road is finished next December, you are going to be able to get from Langley to Tsawwassen Ferry Terminal in 25 minutes. That's a drive that right now takes about an hour from my house in Langley, maybe a little more if there's traffic. So tremendous improvement, and of course that's a major corridor for those truckers, for the freight. It also helps those who are coming from the border because it connects to the Pack Highway, the 176th overpass from number one. So all of this will work together to not only help get trucks out of the way of commuters, but also improve the freight flow. Their time, of course, is money, improves that for them, just helps the whole system work better for people.
And in your neck of the woods, the Carvolth Park and Ride, I know we have a couple photos to look at. This is another important piece of the puzzle.
Well, this gets back to having bus service across that bridge. Finally.
Yes.
It takes a while to build up a route and for people to get used to it, but I've ridden it a number of times now. This is a day when we not only launched it, but I took a trip with our local MP and our mayors, and we were able to get from Carvolth at 200th and, well, it's 202, but it's around the 200th Street exit for people that don't know Carvolth, all the way to Braid Station in just over 20 minutes. It'll be shorter than that once the full HOV capacity is complete. Right now, that bus has to take the existing off-ramp at Brunette in order to get to the to the Braid SkyTrain station. But ultimately, it will never leave the median lane. It'll go straight on, straight off, never have to interact with any kind of traffic at all. And at that time, you will likely see the speed increase to the same that we saw returning home. Returning home that day, we were back from Braid all the way to Carvolth at 200th Street in 17 minutes.
Wow.
So, and I was talking with passengers on the bus that day, and they had been riding it regularly, and they had similar experiences. So, huge difference for people in Langley. In contrast, my daughter comes out for Christmas, Thanksgiving, things like that. She lives downtown. And ordinarily, I would drive into Surrey to pick her up at the King George SkyTrain station, which back and forth, if there's traffic, easily a half an hour, sometimes 40 minutes to go there and back, sometimes a little more. And instead, she was able to take the SkyTrain directly to Braid Station, get on the express bus, and I was picking her up 5 minutes away from my house. So
Wow.
that's the kind of, but that's one of those real differences for families. Right?
Yeah, and I know in the first few days I did see a lot of commentary on social media, especially people already commenting about the shortened wait times and how much of a benefit that is. So great to see.
I think it's hard for people who aren't in Langley or points beyond. It's hard for them to understand the difference that it has made. Even for people in Surrey, yes, they have some distance to go, but they've had SkyTrain for quite a number of years. They've had those connections, and we never have. So it's a huge change for us.
Yeah. With all the benefits the Portman brings, there have been a couple of challenges, namely with the winter conditions.
Oh, yes.
But those are being addressed.
They have, and I can't say enough about the people we've been working with. The contractors, Kiewit, have been really great. They immediately went to work with engineers around the world and with our team, and they literally had wind tunnels and labs back east, working on mock-ups of the bridge, testing different solutions. They had another testing facility set up on Cyprus to work in real-world conditions. They not only came up with long-term solutions like some hydrophobic coatings, so water resistant coatings that they're testing right now, some de-icing materials that they're testing right now, but also a short-term solution, which anybody who watched the news that night would have seen these little sweepers that they've constructed. And you can see them now. They're being installed on the bridge, and testing is ongoing with those, but really they solved that within 4 weeks, and I don't think anybody thought that we'd be implementing a solution that quickly. So it was a really, really devastating circumstance for people who were on that bridge that day. But I can't say enough about the people who've worked to solve it, and they've been so cooperative, and Kiewit has done all the work and paid for the cost of that. So
great. Back in Langley, where are things at with the Mufford Overpass, and why is this project so significant to the area?
Well, we have in Langley 5 level crossings, level rail crossings, within about 2-3 square miles. It's as those who live in Langley know, the rail also curves around Langley. So when a long coal train goes through, it literally stops traffic in all directions for as long as it takes for that train to get through. And some estimations show that it takes a full 20 to 30 minutes for the traffic then to clear and get back to normal. So considering that we have on average about 24 trains a day going through Langley, and that's liable to increase as we see freight traffic through the ports increase, this was reaching a critical point for us. So the first overpass that was built was at 203rd, and now the Mufford overpass is well into construction, and we're looking for that to be completed in the coming year. So very exciting. That again will be a real benefit to families who now sit and wait for trains to go by.
What's the latest on the Highway of Heroes sign? I know it suffered extensive damage in a recent car crash.
Well, here's where having a can-do ministry is just such a joy.
Yeah.
This was a sign that was put up to commemorate the naming of that section of Highway 1 as the Highway of Heroes. Wonderful commemoration of our folks who serve overseas protecting us. And it had been wiped out in an accident which just coincidentally took place where the sign was on the median and just bashed it down. And our staff were very quick to get out there and get a new sign up. And that meant a lot to people in the community for whom, they have loved ones overseas, or maybe they've lost loved ones. And just that honor for those veterans is so hugely important. So it was great work by our employees to get that back up.
Definitely. One other mode of transportation, cycling, a lot of people enjoy. And here some $100,000 in funding was announced recently to help the Allard Crescent Shoulder Bikeway be built in Langley Township.
Well, see, there's this myth. There's this myth in our more urban centers in British Columbia that folks like us out in Langley just stay in our cars all the time and don't think green. But actually, cycling is a very, very popular activity in Langley, and it's becoming more popular in terms of a regular mode of transportation. So we're trying to do everything we can to work with municipalities, local governments, and identify with them where it's best to put cycling infrastructure, and we'll continue to invest in that and continue to expand that. It's important to note as well that when the Portman Bridge is eventually completed to 10 lanes, it'll also have cycling infrastructure as well. So the idea eventually will be to connect those communities south of the Fraser, and you'll be able to cycle all around the suburban areas. So here we are. I don't think we'll quite catch up to Vancouver in terms of bike friendliness, but it'll be a great improvement for those who are trying now to ride their bikes on more rural roads where there aren't much shoulders and things like that.
Yeah, nice to have those options available, whether it is buses or bikes over the Portman and such.
Yeah.
Great options for people. Well, a great overview of transportation topics, but we're going to take a short break here on Constituency Report. Grab a pen and paper. We'll put up contact information for MLA Mary Polak. We'll be back to chat much more with her right after this. Welcome back to Constituency Report. We continue our chat today with Mary Polak, MLA for Langley and Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure. Turning to aviation, you recently used Langley Airport as the backdrop for an announcement of a new aviation strategy called Connecting the World. Tell us what this aims to do.
British Columbia has a lot of opportunities in the field of aviation. So not just what we ordinarily think about in terms of air travel, tourist travel, but also in terms of trade and in terms of high-tech industries. We chose Langley, for example, because many people don't realize that Langley is a hub nationwide for helicopter repairs, maintenance. There are fleets that run out of there. So really tremendous work goes on at the Langley Airport. And George Miller, who's run it for many years, and his son Guy, they have just done a tremendous job in making Langley more than your typical regional airport. But for us, as we look to the future, we're limited to a certain degree because, of course, air travel, air traffic is federally regulated. But we also have opportunities to create bilateral agreements that will enhance the ability for other nations to be sending their air travel here. We've certainly seen incredible improvements through YVR and what they're doing in making sure that both the luggage component and the traveler component travels more freely through the airport. We still want to be continuing our work with the federal government to try and ease some of the challenges we have in terms of visa restrictions, etc. But we're making a lot of progress, and this aviation strategy takes us forward for the next number of years as we look to how we can focus our attention and therefore advance what we have in British Columbia in terms of our potential.
And coinciding with that announcement, Vector Aerospace announced it will be expanding, and this is great news for jobs and investment.
Absolutely, and Vector is one of those companies that for people who are not involved in the aviation sector, they might never hear about. And it's my experience as we move into a higher tech society, there are all sorts of things happening in our own backyard that we're not even aware of. And I would venture to say most people wouldn't be thinking of a company like Vector. And yet, British Columbia really does excel in terms of the high-tech aspect of aviation, and Vector's a really good example of that.
And aviation, issues like air access, that sort of thing, really tie in nicely with the BC Jobs Plan and that continued importance of a positive relationship with the Asia Pacific.
Yeah, and the BC Jobs Plan, of course, really focused attention on specific sectors of the economy. Not that other sectors aren't important, but recognizing that if we have a focus on areas where we foresee potential growth, then we're more likely to capture that, and we're more likely to be able to see those areas expand. And aerospace is one of the areas identified in the BC Jobs Plan specifically, and that's one of the reasons we are focusing our aviation strategy on specific areas where we as a province can have influence and where we can make some changes like we did with the jet fuel tax. Working with industry to make it more attractive for other airlines and others from the aviation industry to locate in British Columbia.
Liquefied natural gas as well, another bright spot and a key part of the BC Jobs Plan that a lot of people are really excited about.
And I think excited about probably for financial reasons, right? Everybody looks and says, wouldn't that be great if we could be like Alberta and have a fund, and that would be wonderful. There are other reasons, though, that we should be really excited about how liquefied natural gas has come together in British Columbia. And a big part of that is communities and First Nations. In the case of liquefied natural gas, you actually have a First Nation leading the way in the development of two of the first natural gas plants, and that's the Haisla First Nation near Kitimat. Again, you have Kitimat as a community involved and excited about the potential for jobs and the economic activity that that's going to bring. The pipeline, the Pacific Trails pipeline that will connect in, is one that enjoys the support of 16 out of the 17 First Nations along its route. So the liquefied natural gas initiative really highlights the fact that when you are trying to develop resources and when there are sensitivities around First Nations, around communities, you can do it right. You can do it in a way that brings people on board, that recognizes the concerns that they have and addresses them. And I think that's the untold story of the liquefied natural gas opportunity in British Columbia.
Definitely, and we'll keep our eye on that one for sure. Back to Langley, you recently got a visit from Minister of State for Seniors Ralph Sultan. This was for the launch of the Better at Home program. Tell us a bit about this.
Well, I'll start by saying my dad is in his 80s, and anyone who has a parent who's aging begins to realize that if you are going to manage to maintain their independence, have them living in their own place, There's lots of little things that could help. Very often, these are folks who are not needing a tremendous amount of support. They don't need a full-time nurse. They don't need a full-time caregiver. But they could use some help if they're in a house, maybe with raking the leaves. Maybe they could use a hand with some little fix-it things around the house. Maybe they could use a trip shopping. Maybe they could use somebody to visit them and just socialize. Go out for coffee. All sorts of things that improve the lives of seniors and enable them to live at home independently longer. Huge benefits to that, right? Because then that's far less costly to the taxpayer. But it also means that those seniors tend to be healthier and tend to enjoy quality of life much further into their life. So Ralph was there to announce the expansion of this. The Langley Seniors Resource Society is one of 5 that will be launching this expansion first. It will eventually grow. I think the number is 56 or 57 that will ultimately be around the province. But it's super good news for seniors, and we have the United Way to thank for the partnership that has made this possible. And again, something a long time coming. I was Healthy Living and Sport Minister way back when we first started talking about this, and it's grown slowly, but for those who've been involved, it's just been hugely valuable.
Absolutely. Turning to healthcare, you recently attended an event to mark the start of construction for the Langley Memorial Hospital maternity unit, an expansion there?
Yeah, so in Langley, first of all, we just have such tremendous support for our maternity services in Langley. Oh yeah, there you get the great picture.
Very cute photo.
with the most important person right in the middle. But in Langley, we enjoy huge support for our maternity center. There's the maternity unit, there's also the maternity clinic. We have a group of doctors there who are just incredibly innovative. And I know that women clamor to be able to have their children at Langley, and that means it's been really, really crowded as well. So this expands, gives 7 new private suites. I think there's ultimately 20 different rooms that will be added. But one of the great things is that with the enhancements that Fraser Health will provide, they'll be able to relocate so that the maternity clinic and the maternity unit are now linked and closer together. So there will be much greater integration of that service. But I have to acknowledge one of our generous donors. That day when we made the announcement, we acknowledged the Vander Kerkhoff family, who generously donated $1 million to the capital campaign that the Hospital Foundation is engaged in. So tremendous supporters of our maternity clinic, and have been for years. Their family has not only benefited from it greatly, but they've also returned in kind their giving generously to it. I can't say enough about the Langley Memorial Hospital Foundation. Their board works very hard, and they've been really successful at their capital campaigns, and I know this will be another one for them. So really great news for Langley. Our little hospital does a great job in the maternity area.
And a recent healthcare-related community event, the Walk for Memories, back in January, supports funds and awareness of Alzheimer's disease.
Alzheimer's is one of those conditions that it's hard to understand unless you've been through it. I had an uncle who eventually succumbed to Alzheimer's. And when you watch a person change from who you've known, it's so painful, not just for the person who's experiencing it, but for everyone around them, their friends, their families. And so here's an attempt to raise awareness about the need to continue research in the field of Alzheimer's. It's still an area we know very little about, and we need to see more research if we're going to come to eventually find some kind of a cure, better management of the condition. And important too that we had a guest there that we honored who is living with Alzheimer's right now. And it's important for people to know that there are treatments and help available to make things easier for them as they're watching this transition of their loved one. But no doubt a challenge. And again, the community of Langley turns out in full force and supports this great effort.
Great community spirit, and that's reflected in our discussion of a few great folks who have received Queen's Diamond Jubilee medals. Lillian Sobolski is one of them. Tell us about her contributions.
Oh, Lillian, I was so happy to see her named, and I should say, in our case, we decided to have a community-based committee, and we took nominations from the community, so I didn't make the choices. And so to see her name come up amongst the choices, I was so pleased. she does a tremendous amount of work using her voice, using her natural style of entertaining. She entertains at seniors' facilities all over, church group. Anytime someone needs someone to perform in that regard, Lillian will be there. She just got a huge heart for the community, and she had her whole family there, which was just wonderful.
Great, and we have a group shot as well. Some other recipients: Roy Brown, Major Robert S. Thompson, Frank Edward Kellens as well.
And I should say that isn't actually Frank Edward Kellens there. It is his friend, because now this should give us all hope for when we are looking at aging, because in spite of being born in 1924, and having served in the Second World War, Frank Edward Kellens was off in the Bahamas having a lovely vacation.
Oh, wow.
So I hope when I'm that age, I'm feeling up to going to the Bahamas. But wonderful stories. I mean, Frank Kellens served in the Second World War, tremendously involved in veterans issues. Major Robert Thompson is a fellow who has done so much for, boy, when I looked at him, he looked young to have achieved what he had. But one of his main areas of focus was St. John Ambulance first aid, and getting those kinds of initiatives in throughout his work with cadets, etc. And then, of course, Roy Brown, who one of these quiet and unassuming, but at the same time, throughout his career, he has managed to not only run his own businesses, but then volunteer, doing just about everything. It sounded his list of volunteer accomplishments were pretty long. He's just incredible people and great representatives of Langley.
And we're almost out of time, but we wanted to mention the Langley City Volunteer Appreciation Dinner. Great people recognized there.
Always. Langley is the place to be in terms of volunteers. It is different than other communities that I've lived in and passed through, and maybe I'm biased because I'm their MLA, but I just think the spirit of volunteerism, it lives in Langley.
It's alive and well.
For sure.
Thanks so much for the chat today, Mary. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
Mary Polak, she is MLA for Langley and Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure. Many ways to connect with Mary. You can visit her website, marypolakmla.bc.ca. She's on Twitter as well, at marypolakmla. She's on Facebook, and you can catch her on YouTube as well. She's got her own channel, so do look for it on YouTube. Thanks so much for watching Constituency Report.